It's time for Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group with certified financial planners Kevin Korhorn, Mike Bernard, and Josh Gregory.
Welcome to another episode of the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group, where every week we're helping you take your next wise step in your financial life. Thanks for being here, friends. My name is Mike Bernard. I'm your host. I'm also one of the CFPs on the program. And with me in the KFG studios, my business partner and fellow CFP, Josh Gregory, as well as special guest Alysia Boehner.
Do you use part of your house for a small business or a side hustle? Or do you drive your car for work? There's so many ways like this that our personal lives and our business lives can blur together. And if so, it can mean that your insurance is not written properly. So to help us unpack all of that, we've got Alysia Boehner back in the studio for today's episode.
I feel like that's probably a trend, like especially over the past 10 years, and then even more so with COVID. So yeah, is it time to update or revisit your insurance because you've got some unique situation like that? We're helping with that and more. If you have questions for the program or have questions about your insurance coverage, whatever, we're here to help. Call or text 574-222-2000, 574-222-2000. Easy for me to say. WiseMoneyShow.com is where you can find us online. All over social media as well. Search the Wise Money Show. Connect with us there. This is a two-part series, and so we appreciate auto owners for sponsoring these programs. Last week's program, we were focusing on how insurance costs are rising, personal insurance costs are rising, as well as some tips on ways that you can manage that cost. So if you missed that episode, go check it out, YouTube or podcast. Alysia, welcome back. Glad to have you. We're going to focus today on tougher issues, okay? I'll just tell you, we are going to hit summer insurance tips. That's upcoming, so if you're on the water or doing some family trips, we're going to be talking about that. But I want to start with where Josh led us to, and that is the business use of a vehicle or your house. Okay, and vehicle first. I think that probably applies to more people. If you drive your car for work, whether you own it or whether the business owns it, how should your insurance be structured? Let's start wading into that water.
Okay, so this can be done a couple of different ways, mainly two. One, you can keep your auto on what we call a personal auto insurance policy, which usually means the insurance company has said, not worried about that. We're okay with that. But we change what's called the usage of the vehicle to business use if it's going to be driven for work a lot. Or the company may say, we don't like what you're doing with your car, and we do not want to cover that. And then it needs to change to what we call a commercial auto policy or business auto policy.
Commercial auto policy, is that more expensive?
Yep.
Generally?
100%. Usually maybe double even.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the difference is kind of enhancing or changing, modifying your existing policy that you've maybe had since you were 16 years old versus adding a second one. For adding the commercial, you have to have your car owned by the business?
Not
or
always.
Is that not necessary?
Oh, I was going to ask that too.
So the vehicle can be personally owned, it can be business owned, or sometimes we can do what's called a lease back agreement where you as an individual or you as a business are leasing the vehicle from the other person that owns it. And each company is different on what they will do regarding that. So you'd have to ask about that titling, what they require, depending on the carrier.
Is there some kind of threshold for activity? Is it a certain percentage of the miles you drive each year that would matter? Or if I get in my car one time and I'm using it for work purposes, Murphy's Law would say, well, that's when the accident's going to occur. Yeah. And does that create a problem in some way?
So it's easier for me to tell you guys what's not okay on a personal auto policy. Here are some things that are generally not okay with maybe not all companies, but a lot of companies. If you have signage on your vehicle of any type, almost always, many carriers will say, nope, we will not keep that on a personal auto policy.
What about a really dirty car where someone wrote, wash me on it? Does that count?
That's fine, and that's not a business item.
Never.
Wash me is more of an action item.
But what if it's a car washing business?
Right.
Wash
Great
car
advertising.
wash, that will need to change.
Kick some goodies back to us for that idea. Personally, I've never gotten a car wash. Never. I might start. I might need to, but never gotten a car wash. So, okay. So signage,
All right.
helpful.
Signage is one. The gross vehicle weight of the vehicle. I know that sounds silly, but if the gross vehicle weight exceeds a certain amount because the truck is so large, they know it's kind of used for something a little different, right? Then that can sometimes throw it to commercial.
People don't usually drive a dump truck as their daily commuter or something.
You got it. If it's a commercial type vehicle, that's another one that can, like a hearse or something of that nature. How the vehicle is titled, that can sometimes make it switch. This was a weird one that I didn't even realize.
How it's titled, meaning who's the owner of it?
Correct. If it's the business, some companies will say, nope, if it's titled to the business name, then we either need to move it to commercial, but some will say, no, we've got that lease back agreement. You can say that you're leasing it from one to the other. And the weight of the tools you are carrying. One of our carriers, I didn't even realize that was a rule, but I looked at it and that's a rule.
Okay, so now I'm gonna really put you to the test here. So
right.
it's a personal business or a personal auto policy.
Okay.
And you rarely drive for work.
Okay.
But you go to work and someone needs to go pick up a supply. And that supply could be coffee or could be running to Menards or something like that to grab something. And you go and do that in your own personal vehicle that is personally insured. And there's an accident.
Yep.
Is the business at fault or at risk? And is there any coverage for that?
So
how would that work?
Okay, so you personally are going to be covered by your personal auto policy. So if you get pulled into the suit as Mike Bernard, you're going to be covered that way. But if Korhorn Financial Group gets pulled into that lawsuit because they say, oh, Mike, what were you doing? Well, I was on my way to go pick up pens.
Yeah.
And I was doing that for Korhorn. Then the business needs to have something that's called non-owned auto coverage. And that non-owned auto coverage would be picking up that exposure when they do not own. Korhorn doesn't own your personally owned vehicle, but you're running that errand for Korhorn.
Does the business, and please don't use the business name. I feel like bad omens or like someone's going to come. So
don't go get pens.
We're not
Just
superstitious.
don't get pens.
Okay, we're not superstitious. Is there some blanket coverage that employers should have that covers every possible vehicle, or are they supposed to schedule this in advance? So, hey, wait a second, whoever's doing the Starbucks run, let's make sure that you have extended use, like for your.
Well, that's really what the non-owned coverage is it's a blanket
category.
coverage saying if you don't own the vehicle, but they will ask you how many employees are using their vehicles to run personal errands. So the business needs to ballpark that and use that.
Is this a pretty common thing as you're writing any business, business autos? Okay.
How expensive is that? I mean, does that significantly increase a business's coverage?
Oh,
No?
than't goodness.
No, that's a reasonably priced.
So if you are a business owner and you have your vehicles covered or whatever, and there could be some employees or someone driving on behalf of the business in their own vehicle, you need to have this line of coverage built into your policy.
Yeah, and also keep in mind, if you don't own a vehicle as a business, you can add that to your liability insurance. So you can add that non-owned auto to your general liability that you might carry for your building for slip and fall type incidents. You can add that non-owned auto that way if you don't own a commercial owned vehicle.
Right, because not every business is going to have car insurance because they don't have any cars and no fleet or anything like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's two ways to get that built into your protection.
Easy one. So they're super easy. So nope, it's business owned vehicle or business policy. And now instead of running for pens on during the weekday, you're running for donuts on a Saturday morning for your family, and you get in an accident personally. So now it's a business vehicle and it's a business insurance policy, but you're driving it. There's an accident caused while you're using it for non-business reasons, for personal reasons.
Yeah,
assuming that one's easy.
Well, yeah. So usually when we as agents, we quote the insurance, it'll say, how are the vehicles used? Business use, personal use, or both?
And it's almost always both, unless it's that,
always both.
dump truck
Unless
or something.
it's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay. And then I want to get into, and this is going to start taking us into the next segment, but if you're doing a side hustle and you're driving your vehicle for that side hustle, you're giving me a smile here and not everyone can see. That's dangerous territory. Is that right?
That is dangerous territory. So Uber drivers,
Yeah.
Shipped, listen up. now our carriers are becoming more responsive. We're slow, right? Our industry is so slow. We're like dinosaurs crawling with our threshold for change and things that are new and different. So many companies will let you add an endorsement now to your personal auto insurance to cover Uber driving. It gets trickier when you're delivering something like food or a product. That often, if you're a pizza
Eats.
delivery person, commercial auto insurance, even though I know you're driving your personal car, everybody knows you're doing it.
All right, we're gonna pick that back up, as well as side hustle from your house. How does that shift your homeowner's insurance? So that and more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Hello, YouTube. Thanks for being here. This is the Wise Money Show. What you're watching right now is our weekly 1-hour talk show that airs right here on this channel, 10 a.m. Eastern Time every Saturday morning. All throughout the work week, though, we've got lots of other content. I don't know. How many videos are we up to now? A couple thousand. Maybe more than that. Lots of content. If you've had a financial question, had a financial situation, good chances are we've got some helpful content about it. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and if you like the content, leave questions below. We appreciate it.
Okay, I looked up, just Google search, how many people have a side hustle? What's your guess?
Oh.
Americans.
Okay, there's 350 million Americans. Are we somewhere in that range?
Give me a percentage.
Oh,
percentage of them, sorry.
Percentage of adults? Percentage?
25%.
You're stalling. 25%?
That's my guess.
Could be right.
I would have said 10%.
It's all over the place. So the internet
How can it be
is
all over
so
the
ridiculous. But the most common answer that I'm seeing is 45%.
45?
I see 34%. I see 40. One site says 93%. I'm pretty sure that's not right. Not credible. 50%. Yeah.
Wow.
But it's a lot.
No one has cited 10% yet.
No. Not one of the most common answers.
Well, let's get into that. So we're gonna do side hustle stuff with vehicles, business use of your home. That'll take the entire segment, and then after that topic, likely in the third segment, we'll get into summer insurance tips, and then we can circle back to insurance depending on where we're at. So, all right.
Alysia, can you pull the mic a little closer? I think you're like
So
leaning
needy.
back more, and yeah, there we go.
Better.
Yep.
Okay.
I like to move around.
All right. Do you drive your car for work? Bigger question. Do you ever work from home? That trend has increased significantly. Does that change how you should structure your insurance? We're helping with that and more right now. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. With me, my name is Mike Bernard. With me in the KFG studios, Josh Gregory, special guest Alysia Boehner. Stay up to date on Wise Money content. All the Wise Money content is right there on the website, wisemoneyshow.com. But then all over social media as well. Go check it out. Wherever you're at, search the Wise Money Show. Follow us there. We appreciate it. All right, so we're talking about the complicated area of when, business and personal overlap. Mm-hmm. And with insurance, while we're over the past 10 years, that's more and more of a normal thing. Having your insurance structured correctly is not normal. That is actually very hard to do. And so driving for a side hustle, we left off on that. So you mentioned the Ubers and Uber Eats and all that sort of stuff. And I think I cut you off when you said when you're delivering something. Yes. So how do you structure it? Because is it like pizza delivery? I remember I never delivered pizzas when I was a teenager, but my best friends did. And the word was just don't tell anyone. Like, don't tell your insurance carrier. So is ignorance bliss here, or like how should you structure things?
So you should always ask. If you're delivering a product, you should always ask, because the risk is you have a claim and they realize you've got that Papa John's thing on the top of your car. When you have that claim, they can deny that loss. Now, will they? Maybe, maybe not, but they can.
Yikes.
So,
and if that was a bad accident, they may be motivated to look for a loophole to say, hey, you didn't hold up your end of the bargain. You
Correct.
didn't, fully inform us of what the risks were when we were setting the price and making our arrangements together on this policy. And so, we shouldn't be on the hook is essentially what they would say in court, probably, right?
Yeah, and back to that whole frequency severity thing, I would say the larger that loss is, the more likely the carrier might be to be incentivized to try to deny coverage.
Right.
So, unfortunately.
All right. So what about working from home?
All right.
So if you're working for your side hustle, and maybe and the nature of a side hustle is you've got a main hustle. And so your side hustle is you're doing something and it's out of your house. Do you need to have coverage for your house? Is there some, like, how would you structure that, or does it depend? And if it does, like, what are some of the factors?
Okay, so first, working from home would imply that you work for someone else and you just have an office that you work from. Like, I take my laptop home at night, I do work. That's usually fine. On your homeowner's insurance, you probably don't need to make any changes unless what you're doing from home is out of the normal and you're not just punching a keyboard. If you own the business or you are the one operating the business, we're back to that famous phrase, well, it just depends. So most of the home policies will offer what they call incidental business endorsements. And that incidental is defined a lot of times by, is it your full-time job or is it your part-time job? And how much income are you earning? And then what are you doing? So you might not earn very much income, but if you are a garage and you're changing people's oil, they're going to say, nope, that needs to go on a commercial auto policy. We're not going to cover that on a home policy. It also could be the amount of tools and equipment that you're using at home or the building itself that you need to insure for the business. You might max out because they'll only cover up to a certain dollar amount under that incidental business coverage.
Why haven't we seen that yet?
Interesting.
People hiring out, changing oil out of their house.
Because they don't tell their agent. It happens. They
Oh,
just don't
really?
tell their agent. That's
If you do
the
it,
same answer.
reach out to me in your local. Just kidding.
Have you ever changed oil before?
No, I haven't.
Not on a lawnmower or
So,
anything?
Yeah, well, maybe.
You don't live in Elkhart
Okay,
County.
so with if you work out of your house and you have customers ever coming to your house to pick something up, or I guess I'm thinking of for a business meeting or something, your office location is your house. Does that increase? Like, is that an it depends? And yeah, you should get some coverage there.
That isn't, it depends. Generally speaking, companies don't like foot traffic to the house.
Yeah.
So they're probably going to say it needs to go on a business type policy at that point. But some exceptions would be a lot of carriers will write childcare if it's under a certain number of kids, or like piano lessons, things they think are really low risk. But if it was something other than those couple of things, I'd say ask.
What if you're producing something at home, like an actual product? I've got lots of friends who they make honey with honeybees, or they make maple syrup, or some sort of a product.
What about the Etsy sort of thing where
There
you're doing something?
So
out
this
of your
is
house?
actually a super easy answer, because your homeowners, when you add incidental business to your home, you're extending your home insurance coverage. That does not give you any product liability insurance.
Yeah,
that if
good point.
your honey makes someone sick, or your product is defective and hurts someone. So if you wanted coverage for that, you would definitely need business insurance. But if you were okay, like my honey never makes anyone sick, well, then maybe you're just worried about slip and fall at that point, and that might be okay.
Or bee stings. Have we considered that, Josh? Okay. If you're operating a side hustle out of your house, then if you're not producing any product or anything like that, and customers aren't coming, then it's not that big a deal. But if you're driving or delivering, it absolutely is what I'm hearing.
Well, yeah, and I guess I would just say, if you own the business and you're operating the business out of your house, you 100%, we're going to use this acronym since you were joking.
Yeah.
AYA, ask your agent.
Okay. Yeah.
Ask your agent.
I thought of that. We got there last weekend's show as well. But it's if you're anywhere, and more people are towing the line. If you're anywhere close to this line, I don't know how you can just get your insurance online without an independent agent. I just don't. I don't know. And having an independent insurance agent, the reason why we say independent is someone that can truly represent you. They don't represent one insurance carrier. You go to them with your needs and situations, and guess what? Those situations change over time. They evolve over time. And that insurance agent then goes out to the market. They take your situation out and look at the portfolio of companies that they have access to, and look and say, well, where's the best place for you? Where's the best price, the best place to get coverage, that sort of thing. That's what I mean by independent agent versus someone that works for just one insurance company. They're going to represent them. And there's a bunch of great people that do that, but they truly represent the insurance company.
But if you want an even better arrangement, you're working with a certified financial planner who risk management is a big part of what you talk about when you're building a financial plan, right? It's an entire section of the financial plan. How do you make sure that you have the right coverages in place, that you have the right amount of protection, and that you're not spending too much on it, because every dollar that slips through the cracks in the form of too much insurance premium or unnecessary insurance premium is a dollar that's not helping you reach your goals. But you're going to have conversations often at a deeper level with a certified financial planner, because they're talking about all areas, all activities, all the things that you have going in your financial life to help you reach your goals. And often topics come up that are insurable, or there's risk there that you don't even recognize. And you wouldn't. Like, who's thinking about all the terrible things that could happen with that side hustle? Your certified financial planner should, because what if that side hustle that you started for the hope of helping build some financial independence in your life actually sends you in the wrong direction because the wrong event occurs and you didn't protect for it? So your certified financial planner having your agent on speed dial, I think, is important. They need to be collaborating together. This is not something where, we said earlier in the show, sometimes people are told, well, just don't tell your agent and then you won't get charged for this.
Yeah.
Don't tell your agent means you're not protected for this quite often.
Yeah, it means you don't even know what that claim will be. Will it be a slap on the wrist and sure, we'll cover it this time and cancel you? Because that's the other thing that happens. Or nope, we're going to deny that loss.
Yeah.
And if that's a building, that's a problem.
Really quickly here, Airbnb, those sorts of things, renting your house out on a weekend or for a week or something like that, how's that covered?
It's about 50-50 split with carriers that are okay with it versus carriers that aren't, or at least for us, that's about what it is. There's always a limitation on the number of days you can rent out per year. If you go over that threshold, then you've moved into, again, a business policy type territory instead of homeowners insurance. But also know that coverage is so limited. So most companies are going to require you have a property manager, or you're working with an Airbnb or someone who's carrying underlying liability before they pick up. They don't want to be first in line for the claim. Probably not going to cover theft of your stuff in your house. May not cover damage to the house if the tenants or the guests.
Then why do you need, so that's what you need the insurance for. And so again, I would, if you're venturing into that, again, I wouldn't go to the ignorance is bliss. I'd talk to your insurance agent. Okay, summer tips, summer insurance tips. We've got that and more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. We can hit that more. I didn't mean to tuck it in there right with just a minute left. If there's more like Airbnb rental, and maybe that can even fit into some of the summer tip type stuff if you're doing a
It might
family
fit in
trip
wherever you asked for other trends, because that was one of them. Is like people are renting everything out, RVs, boats, like you name it. People want to stink and rent it out for 3 days now.
I can't believe I haven't seen this much, and you're probably right. It probably is more in Elkhart County. The home garage.
Oh yeah.
That's a good idea. I don't know
That's a terrible idea.
Well,
It's
get the
actually a
insurance
terrible
coverage.
idea.
Get the insurance coverage. But yeah, anyway.
So those who are not from this area, why Elkhart County? In Elkhart County, there's a lot of folks with a lot of skills that they pick up in their own trade or the RV industry, and they monetize that on the weekends or whatever. They put those tools and skills to use for money. And may or may not have the right coverage in place, right?
Well, right, because Garage Keepers, that's what's covering Mike's car when he takes it to you, Josh. Get the oil changed.
All right, third segment. So
Third, not fourth.
Third, yep. All right. So going back to insurance, summer insurance trends. All right. All right, weather has improved here in the Midwest. It's spring. It's approaching summer. That means a new season and changes to your insurance. We're helping with that right now. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name's Mike Bernard. With me in the KFG studios, Josh Gregory, special guest, insurance expert Alysia Boehner. Make sure you stay up to date on every episode of the Wise Money Show. That and a lot of other contents on the YouTube channel. Go to YouTube, search the Wise Money Show. Check us out there. We appreciate that. All right. So it's sometimes in Michigan, in Indiana, or the Midwest, you can get all 3 or 4 seasons in one day.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get it in one day. But the trend has been getting better weather. And what does that mean? People are fishing. People are out on their boat. People are doing some fun things. And all of that, anytime there's a seasonal change, you've got to be aware of how that might impact your insurance. So, Alysia, open segment here. Right. It's just some summer insurance tips, things to be aware of in general.
Okay. So anytime you've got the toys, right? The boats, the ATVs, even if we're talking other season, winter, snowmobiles, anybody that's regularly driving that vehicle needs to be listed as a driver. So we think of our family members, but we might not think of, my adult children that don't live with me. I need to list those as drivers if they're regularly driving the boat or the jet ski.
Because they're back home for the summer or they're spending more time.
It's more because they have regular access to. They are a regular operator and they're regularly accessing it. Or I know, not to name any names, but we have some friends that snowmobile regularly with groups of people. And I'm guessing occasionally they borrow each other's snowmobiles.
Right.
Those types of situations, you want to list those other drivers. What about golf carts? Are you guys getting the golf cart communities?
There is totally a trend going on with golf carts.
Napanee is golf cart friendly,
My
and Scott
kids
Boehner
beg
is
for one
begging.
all the time.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah.
Scott's begging right now too. If you are driving that golf cart on the road and it is leaving either a golf course or your property, it needs to be covered differently. Don't assume if it's on your homeowner's insurance, it's going to be covered right. You need to make sure that it is covered correctly. And you want more of an auto structure, I would say, type coverage for that.
What about my tractor?
Are you driving your tractor off your property?
Well, like if I took it to a neighbor or, I go clear their driveway for them in the winter.
Yeah.
Well, don't charge them.
It's off my property. I don't.
Don't charge them. It gets a little dicey if you're taking it off your property.
So maybe we need to talk then.
Yeah. Whenever you're taking something off, if you're adding a toy typically to your home insurance, we're extending coverage from that home policy. Well, where does that home policy end? Usually the home for certain types of liability situations. Yeah. So
okay. So let me get into a niche area here, but I think it's summer and seasonal related.
Okay.
You've got a boat that you don't have a slip on a lake. You just take it around to different lakes, and so towing that boat around, and that ends up causing an accident or something like that. Conversely, in the summer weathers, people are moving more. Spring, some of that's housing season, and so borrowing someone's trailer, throwing all your furniture in it, and moving it around. Again, same thing. How does coverage work if you're towing something? Does the trailer need to be covered specifically? And what about the property on it? Just get into that a little bit.
Okay, so the liability insurance will usually extend from whatever vehicle's towing it. So you're going to have coverage if it's your truck, Mike, then it would be covered by your insurance automatically for liability if it's personal use. If it's business use, that's not the case. Make sure you add liability to it if it's a business-owned trailer, if you want liability. But if that sucker comes detached, you're not attached to a polling unit anymore. So
oh my goodness,
that can get a little bit awkward.
That's what those chains are for, Mike.
Yeah.
Keep that sucker
attached.
I
don't have any intentions here. But.
And physical damage, if you want coverage for the trailer itself, you have to add it to the policy. So if all you need is liability and you're not towing a lot, I would say you're fine with, it not being listed. But
so you're saying if you got in an accident and the trailer was damaged
and you want that replaced, you need to add that trailer to your car insurance for that trailer to have what we call physical damage coverage.
But if the trailer causes damage because it becomes detached or you take a sharp turn and need it to be a wider turn, the trailer causes damage.
Usually the trailers are attached. I've never had a claim denied for that. Okay. So almost always the trailer's attached to the vehicle. The vehicle's liability is extending and covering that.
Yeah, wild. Okay, other summer tips.
The other one I can think of is motorcyclists. So one big one on motorcycle policies, we'll sometimes see a policy that a client brings in or a prospective client, and they have super low medical payments coverage. Well, what in the world? Who's going to get the most injured in a motorcycle accident? You, if that thing topples. So the reason agents do that is it's a very expensive coverage, but I would say max that puppy out. If you can afford it, max that coverage out because you likely would use it if you ever were in an accident. That's a big one.
Here's an insurance trend, or let's just say a summer trend, the summer road trip. And if you have kids playing travel baseball, then you have no idea what I'm talking about. But for the rest of you, if you're taking the family out west, or you're going to one of the lakes or something like that, and you're doing a family road trip, if you're obviously taking your own vehicle, then no biggie. But if you're renting a vehicle because you don't want to put the miles on, or you don't have the minivan or whatever, and you're renting it, number one, all those rental cars, those costs are going up. But how does the insurance work with that? Should you buy the coverage from the rental company? Do you already have coverage on your own? I guess that's another thing that happens in the summer, the family road trips, maybe renting a vehicle. Speak to that a little bit, Alysia.
So if you have full coverage on the vehicle that you're replacing, then you would have some coverage. You're going to have liability coverage extending from your auto insurance policy, so you usually don't need to add that coverage via the rental company. But the physical damage part, like if you actually wreck the rental vehicle, that can get real dicey. Your policy will cover the way your policy covers, but what it doesn't cover is loss of use. So the rental company may say, hey, this car that you paid, $40 or $50 a day for, now we can't rent it to somebody else. We want you to pay that. Well, that's not automatically covered by your car insurance. Yeah. Or the rental car company may come back and say, well, now this vehicle has a salvage title and it's not worth as much. And so they call it diminished value, and that's not going to be automatically covered. You can add that. Usually you can add that coverage into your auto insurance if you want it and you regularly are renting. But if it's just a one-off, I would pick it up from the rental car company.
What about your deductible following? Like if you've got $1,000 deductible on your normal driver, but then you rent a car, it's going to have $1,000 deductible again?
Yeah, I would think. I guess I never looked at that, to be truthful, but I would think so.
Because it seems like that's maybe one of the selling points that some people will point to for why they get the coverage on that rental. They basically just, here's your car, I wrecked it, sorry, it's back in your hands.
And you can walk away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're not worried about how many days are they waiting for parts to come in and how long is it going to be before the mechanic can touch this and get it fixed again. All that time, as you said, this is a business that is using that car to make money and they can't. So that's a big part of the cost potentially that you could be out of pocket if you don't buy their coverage.
Typically, when I talk to people, I say I'd buy their physical damage and you can decline the liability. That's typically what I say.
All right. Two other, these are going to be complicated. Since COVID, people have their dwelling, they've added pools, they've added more recreational activities that they can do at their house, and that's a trend. So with now the weather being better and starting to use those pools or other things, any tips? Is it, hey, make sure that you've got the right liability coverage, umbrella, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, definitely making sure you've got the umbrella if you have watercraft, but also if you're adding a pool or something like that, a lot of carriers will have restrictions, like it has to be a fenced pool, or if it's an above ground pool, that you have to have a removable ladder so that you don't have a neighbor child wander into your yard and, get hurt. Mm-hmm. Same thing with trampolines. A lot of companies want them to be netted or fenced in yard for those types of things. So just making sure you're asking to make sure that your company, you're following whatever rules they require for that.
Most people look at, if you live in a subdivision neighborhood, what are the bylaws? But you should check bylaws and then check with your insurance carrier as well.
Exactly.
To make sure. Trampoline, that's another one that you already mentioned. The other thing I was going to mention, we don't have time to hit it right now, we'll pick it right back up, but that's fireworks. Oh. And is it just basically blanket insurance coverage for your home insurance, or is there anything else you need to be aware of? So that, and then we're going to pick back up with other insurance trends. So we've got a lot more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. All right. Yeah,
So-
some people
Fireworks.
some people like go all out with
Oh,
fireworks.
I know.
Oh man.
And so if that's you, is that just like, I guess, could a claim be denied? Because, hey, I didn't know you were buying the triple SWAT bomb level fireworks from the local store.
I don't know that.
Yeah. Okay.
So we had a neighborhood get together this past weekend, our second Saturday Sundays, first one of the summer. And somehow Andrea ended up going up to the house. We've been holding this quarter stick of dynamite for a while. One of our other neighbors gave it to us so we could blow something up. Because she's always fascinated. He's always blowing things up, and she's like, next time you do, can we come down and watch? And so he just gave her a stick of dynamite, and we blew it up this weekend finally.
Very
But
tasty.
one of the other neighbors, and it was on our property too. But I was nervous. I'll be honest, and I wondered if I was going to need to make a call to you. But
I would have had to look at your policy form for that.
yeah.
So I teased it out. So we're gonna touch on it, even if it's I would expect the overall liability coverage would extend. However, right there, if it could be significant, I would talk to your insurance agent and have them reach out to your carrier. And
Trying to think of explosion, if that's a covered peril.
Especially
But
if
here's
you
the
did it
thing.
intentionally, right?
People who do fireworks, they often aren't doing them on their property. They're doing them in the street, in the cul-de-sac. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
So that all gets kind of...
all right, so we'll touch on that,
Interesting.
and then we'll get into commercial insurance trends, and we can touch on the renting the house out, that sort of thing. So last segment, so 10 minutes, landing the plane. All right. I totally have forgotten which of the things that I've mentioned. So I got to mention auto owners and then podcast. Usually I just know that instantly, but I've missed it on both of them. So, all right. Thanks for being here. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. My name is Mike Bernard. Here with me in the KFG studios, Josh Gregory, special guest Alysia Boehner. Want to say thank you to our sponsor today, Auto Owners Insurance. Been a faithful sponsor of the Wise Money Show as we hit insurance topics and how that fits within your overall financial plan and financial life. We appreciate them. And if you've missed any of today's episode or last weekend when Alysia was on as well, or anything else, the entire library of Wise Money shows are on podcast wherever you listen. Just go there, search the Wise Money Show, subscribe, follow us there, rate the program as well. We appreciate that. All right, so we're still in sort of the summer insurance tips. And one of the ones, and we're not big firework people, but our neighborhood does just an outlandish amount of fireworks. They're not like somewhere else in the neighborhood, there's a little pond, and they go out on the pond and they just I don't know. It's just a lot. It's a lot. So anything to be aware of if you're a firework fanatic, because obviously there's risk there.
Yeah.
Is it incidental use? Does it depend? And you should contact your agent. What would you say?
I would say you probably should ask your agent, because this is kind of a stump your agent one on this one. It's really going to depend on what the exclusions are in your homeowner's insurance. I would assume that they would defend you if you were the one that lit them off and it ended up ultimately injuring someone. But if it caused damage to other property, that's where I'm kind of getting hung up. It just depends on where you're lighting them off, whether it's on your property, off your property. But I would guess, and this is a guess purely, that your homeowner's liability will extend. So ask your agent, make them check your policy, double check that.
I had a situation a long time ago. Clients, their neighbors were, I don't even think it was on 4th of July, but were lighting off fireworks and whatnot, and ended up getting some brush caught on fire
Oh, boy.
and on their own property. Okay. It just melted the siding for these neighbors. And so there was coverage.
That's fire.
Yeah, there was coverage, but it was not enjoyable, not fun.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's shift gears then and go back to sort of this blending of when personal and business use sort of overlap. What are some other sort of small business or commercial use sort of trends that are happening in the insurance world or in real life that you need to be aware of with insurance?
So I'll tell you, we're getting calls about almost like Airbnb anything. Like it's like nothing's off limits. I want to rent my boat out for a day. I want to rent my RV out for a day. So definitely people who are Airbnbers, they're kind of widening their scope of what they want to offer usage for. And our carriers, we talked about that dinosaur crawl. They're a little bit more concerned when we get into the toys and whether or not the people who are renting the house know how to use that watercraft appropriately or have ever ridden a jet ski or driven one and what that could mean for them being pulled into a claim. So I would say any of those types of things, those are trends we're seeing. And I think we're going to see insurance companies starting to scramble. Here's one too, renting a nanny, like nanny sharing. We had that question the other day. Will you cover nanny share? I have all of these parents coming to my house and we rotate houses. We pay one full-time nanny and there's 3 or 4 families and they rotate different houses they go to. And all of my companies said, huh?
Yeah.
And then a couple of them said, oh yeah, we've heard about nanny share. So these are trends in bigger cities where it's dual income families. All these things are coming about and the companies will slowly scramble, figure out their policy, and then write it in or exclude it if they don't want to cover it.
Okay. Any insurance risk or issue to be aware of if you're renting out someone else's Airbnb? We did this for the first time over spring break. It was fantastic. We did a VRBO for the first time. And yes, it was a great experience. And I'm trying to think, we obviously brought our possessions with us, brought our vehicle, that sort of thing. But any insurance risk that I need to be aware of as the renter because I'm renting someone else's house and maybe they haven't thought of everything or the condition or whatever? Anything I need to be aware of?
Usually those policies, if you're using a professional service like VRBO or Airbnb, they are offering some coverage there for that. So hopefully that policy would go first. But I would think if you were the one that specifically caused the damage, there's always a risk that you'll be pulled into that lawsuit from a liability perspective. Same thing as the fireworks conversation earlier.
Yeah.
It's more than likely you're going to get pulled in and just making sure you've got that liability limit that makes sense for you to defend.
Yeah.
That's an important concept that I remember back the first time I heard about subrogation.
Oh.
Fancy term, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's possible that, you have I'll say a friendly neighbor that comes to your property, gets injured on your property. There may be liability there, or maybe there's a scenario where someone else's insurance pays out and it's their insurance company that comes back after you. Mm-hmm. That's ultimately what subrogation is, right? Like there's entire departments at some of these insurance companies. Could be a health insurance company. That person that got injured on your property, they go to the hospital, they've got all this care, their health insurance policy is paying out for them, and they don't like writing those big checks, and they want to look anywhere they can to try to recoup some of their costs, and so they would be looking at a homeowner in a case like that. And so some people just think, well, it's my friend that's borrowing my boat, or my friend that, they would never sue me if something happened. Well, it's not necessarily you, or not necessarily your friend that would be suing you. It could be their insurance company, and your friend's hands are tied ultimately.
Right. And also I tell people, remember that grief and financial peril, those do strange things to people, right? So we always need to remember that whenever we have death or, a long time paralysis situation, they just monetarily can't absorb that loss. So they may not want to sue you, but they might have to sue you for them to be able to survive. And if they're choosing that hierarchy of need, they're going to pick their family before you possibly. So that's important. And also you hit on another thing, which is if you own a home-based business, some companies, they want to insure both the home and the business. So make sure your company's okay with that too.
Interesting.
Let's just go headlong into you own a small business then.
Yeah.
Trends there. We talked last episode about rising costs for home and auto insurance. Are we seeing that the same way with commercial? What are some other kind of small business insurance trends?
Yeah, so commercial property, we're seeing the same trend in commercial auto because those are the two areas we're experiencing all those things we talked about last week in our segment about inflation. So we're definitely looking at those two lines going up. Cyber has been the hot ticket item for the last few years, but it seems like in 2023 that's kind of stabilized a little bit more. I don't know if that will be long-term or short-term, but I would say as a business owner, you really need to be aware of cyber exposure. Anytime you've got client information or you're taking credit cards, make sure your credit card merchant is covering that risk. So that's a big one. Work comp has always been kind of an up and down industry. That's very stable, and carriers really like that right now. It seems like most companies are doing really well with work comp. So those are kind of some general trends that we're seeing in the commercial side of things.
If I could just, at a macro level, so general trends, it seems as though all businesses have had to deal with the I word over the past 18 months, 2 years, inflation, and both their prices have gone up and their costs have gone up. That's how that works. That's how that works when you dump $5 trillion into the economy. So prices will go up, costs will go up. And therefore, in that cosmic reshuffling of prices to get everything back to balance, insurance prices going up might also lead a business to say, I've got to make some cuts. I can't afford this adjustment. But risks are increasing for businesses. And so would you say for a business owner, sit down and regularly review your coverages and what coverage gaps you may have with your independent insurance agent?
Absolutely, because that business that you insured a few years ago, the cost to rebuild that building, it's going to change just like the cost of construction has gone up. And a lot of commercial policies will have what we call co-insurance limit on that building, which is basically a penalty that if you're not insuring a certain percentage of what the building would cost to rebuild, you're going to be in a penalty state and you're going to be docked money at the time of a claim if you're outside of that percentage threshold. So making sure you're okay there. Also, a lot of businesses just don't even think about business income coverage.
Yeah.
And that if their building burned down, now you can't perform that service. You don't have that person coming in. So they might want to make sure they've got that coverage right.
Trends have shifted within the commercial and business world over the past few years. If you haven't caught up, well, now you've got to catch up, but then also deal with inflation and all these other changes. So sit down with your insurance agent. And same on the personal side, of course. If you're towing the line between business use, personal use, VRBO, or side hustle, that sort of thing, make sure you're working with your independent agent. That's all the time we have for today. On behalf of Alysia Boehner, Josh Gregory, all of us at KFG, have a great weekend. We'll see you next Saturday for the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group.
Securities offered through Silver Oak Securities, member FINRA/SIPC. Advisory services offered through KFG Wealth Management, LLC. Doing business as Korhorn Financial Group. KFG Wealth Management, LLC and Silver Oak Securities Incorporated companies are unaffiliated.